Welcome to the Anyone Can Farm live chat. I'm your host, Mark, coming to you from Baker's Green Acres in lovely Marion, Michigan. That's northern lower Michigan, if you don't know where I'm talking about. I'm in a town called Marion. It's kind of a sleepy town. There's not a whole lot there. There's a lumber yard. I think there's one restaurant, post office, a bar, a supermarket, and then some little gas stations and stuff. It's not exactly a thriving town, but it's holding its own. It's doing okay. And I don't really do much in that town. I usually go to the next town up from me, just because they have the stuff that I need there. So here we are, Tuesday. Our topic for tonight is compost for fertility and sustainability. So the format that we're using right now is I'm only doing 2 shows a week, right? And the Tuesday show is kind of a precursor for whatever's coming. You know, if there's something coming, we're going to address it. And then the Thursday show, we're going to interview other people. So we've done all kinds of people. Some of them are homesteaders, some of them are not. But you know, everyone that we think would be of benefit to the homesteading community will consider them. So we have a form out now, and if you'd like to be interviewed, and there are benefits to being interviewed for sure, then you fill the form out in triplicate and submit it to us for a denial. Right? No, just kidding. And you can put questions on there that you want us to ask you if we're interviewing. So it's kind of a neat thing. If you have something going and you want to, get it out there on the airwaves, it's a good way to do it. This Crunchy Mama, I've interviewed Sean before. Jay-Z's with us. The Cleric Homestead's with us. All right. Do it, Sean. I'd love to interview you again. I was thinking about you guys the other day for some reason. Oh, I know what it was. I was working in the shop, and that pile of signs that you and Amy worked on, some of them are still there. Some of them have been deployed, but some of them are still there. And I got to thinking, wow, that's really neat painting. Whoever did that did a neat job. And Sean is the one that made the plaques and sanded them down. Did a nice job on it. A lot better than I do. I kind of have a tendency to gotta get it done, Well, today for us was an overage day for chicken processing. There is just a lot of people that are in the chicken processing, that are raising chickens now and that don't process their own. And I think that's a huge mistake. If you're going to raise chickens, I think you should consider getting into processing, because it's a skill that not too many people do. For us, the chicken processing business is something that we've done kind of reluctantly, honestly, but it's kept us alive. I mean, we've done well chicken processing. We charge about $4. We charge $4.75 to process a bird right now, and we're turning people away. All right. So, people got to get their birds processed, and for me, if I had to pay $4.75 to process it, I'd say that's it. I'll do it myself. But that's kind of how I am. Maybe it's because I'm cheap that I do stuff for myself. And it pushes me to do things that I don't like to do. I did something today that I didn't like to do, and I did not enjoy the task at all. But it is something that is going to pay huge dividends to me. So Oh, I'll tell you this story because there's some parts of it that I think that we need to hear and we need to talk about. But my buddy Devin has this thing that he calls the dipshit factor. Excuse my language for the word shit in there. But and he claims that this is just since the Wu flu came, that people claim stupidity because of the Wu flu. And they don't do a good job because of the Wu flu. They don't care what anybody thinks because of the Wu flu. And I kind of think he's right. So we, about 5-6 years ago, we bought a dishwasher. And there's 8 kids. At the time, there was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them in the house. So the dishwasher's running sometimes twice a day. And so we've gone through quite a few dishwashers. Right? Andy's with us. Belva's with us. Right on. Let me finish this story. So we bought a really good one. It's a Bosch, Bosch, I guess. And it was like, at the time we bought it, it was like $600, which was a lot for a dishwasher then. Now, we went to the Home Depot the other day. We were there for something else. And I'm looking around and we were looking at dishwashers and they're all $600 now. And, you can get a bottom of the line for $525, but then all the way up to $1,100 for a dumb dishwasher. And anyway, the Bosch, it failed and it quit working. So we called the guy that we've used for a long time. We called him and we got on their schedule. They said, oh, it'll be probably a week. And he doesn't show up in a week. And so I, waited a little while. I call again. Oh, yeah. Dave's been real busy. And so like 2 more weeks, he shows up, comes in, doesn't say anything to me. And, just looks at it with his flashlight and leaves. And I have no idea what's going on. So I got a call there and they say, well, he says it needs a new control board and he's going to order it. Okay. Well, thanks for telling me. I don't hear from him for 2.5 weeks. So I finally found another guy that used to be a pastor of a church up north of Lake City. So I found him. I'd used him before. I called him and they said, oh, it'll be 2 weeks before he can be out. All right. We're so busy anyway. It's like, yeah, fine. All right. I got no time to fix a stupid dishwasher. Fine. 2 weeks. Okay. I tell the girls it's going to be 2 weeks to fix the mighty Bosch. 2 weeks come, the kid comes out. It was one of his employees, I guess. I got a fly in here that's bugging me. Not any longer. The kid comes out, looks at it with his flashlight, says, oh, you got to be a Bosch guy to do this. I can't help you, and tells Jill that'll be $42. And I didn't get mad. I just felt like, is this business going to survive if you go to someone's house, provide them no service, but then charge them anyway? And so I called the kid and I said, hey, man, I really want to do business with you and I want to support your business. I'm glad you guys are in the neighborhood because we need people to fix stuff. We don't have time to be fixing dishwashers. I'd love to have a guy I can just, hey, my dishwasher. Okay, I'll fix it. It's this much. I don't care. Just fix the stupid thing, right? Really, it's to get a funny dishwasher fixed, right? So I have to fret for a couple of days, thinking, well, that's the last time I'll call them. But then I thought, no, you know what? That's why our world is so screwed up, is because we don't counsel each other. So I called him and I said, hey, look, I'm not calling to give you a hard time. I would like you to learn how to do business correctly. You know, you took the job, you said you could fix it, you came out, and then you threw your hands up, said you couldn't do it. And you charge us for that? What did we get for the 42 bucks? And he says, well, you know, I had to spend money, gasoline and stuff. I said, I get that. But like, let's say that you came to me and you want to buy chickens and you show up that day to get your chickens, but I don't load anything in your car, but I charge you 42 bucks. You know, you're paying money for nothing. And we're not going to do that. I mean, we won't use you anymore. And worse than that, we will tell our friends that these guys don't know how to do business. Not that they're jerks, they just don't know how to do business. So I counsel them. Not that it's my job, but I counseled them and I said, I will do business with you again. I will. And he sent me my check back. So good on him. So I'll use him again. Anyway, so we couldn't find a Bosch guy to program the Bosch thing on it. It's just a bunch of switches. It's just I just don't believe it. Look down. What are those things at the end of your arms, your hands? That's all you need, and they will be silky smooth for giving Jill a back rub. Yeah, for washing dishes, right? No, she'll be giving me a back rub tonight because I just put a dishwasher in there. So Jill gets on Marketplace and she finds one. This was really cool. Guy wanted $100 for it, and the way he worded it, it's like, I think this guy is telling the truth. He says, we were doing a construction project at somebody's summer home. They wanted this one gone, and it's hardly been used. And we took a chance. We drove 40 minutes to see it, paid the kid $100. I made a really good contact with this guy's construction. It's him and his dad have a construction company, and so we did get the dishwasher. But I made a good contact there. I had a business card on me. Hey, here's my business card, and the conversation started off because their house was really unique. It had been his parents' house, but then now him and his wife had bought it, and it was really unique. And he says, "Oh yeah, it was a barn that was built in like 1700, and it was moved here, and they built it into a house, and it was really nice." And so these guys there was a class act. Him and his dad were definitely a class act. Had a lot of old equipment in their barn and stuff. And anyway, we got the dishwasher home. Just took it on his word. He says, no, it works. He says there was a gasket that was leaking, and that's why they were there. They were fixing stuff in the house where water had run for a long time. And I pulled it apart, and sure enough, there was a bad gasket in it. So I swapped it out. And anyway, I installed that after we butchered chickens today, 150 chickens or so. And so I'll probably be getting the back rub tonight because, dishwasher is a thing around here that makes a huge difference because we have a lot of people over, and, there's a lot of dishes to do, a lot of dishes. So anyway, that's what I did today, and I didn't like doing it. Nothing fits quite right. We got an old house, and it's just couldn't see, and I had a million things to complain about. But now I'm here. So anyway, I'm really liking this new schedule. I'm not online as much as I was. I like to be online, but what it's done, it's given me time to start making how-to videos and spend more time with Joe doing the Anyone Can Farm videos, and a little bit more time for the things that I really need to be looking after on this farm, because primarily that's what we came here to do, was farm. The Anyone Can Farm experience sort of grew out of that, and I really don't want the farm to suffer for it. I have goals that I'm trying to achieve on this place, and I've achieved quite a few of them. And but that's what I need to be giving to the farm instead of being online 5 days a week. That wasn't working out. So I like this. I have a new format. There's a new deal that I get, and we've got a list of topics that we want to talk about. Of course, if a topic comes up because of, say, something that's happening in the world, then we'll fit it in. And it just so happens this one, it fits in. It's composting for fertility and sustainability, right? It really works well now because we're hearing, and I'm not saying I believe it. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying we're hearing, because you hear stuff all the time, and whoa, I heard it on the news, and so I mean, you haven't figured out by now that those guys lie about 3/4 of the time, and if they tell you the truth, it's because they're setting you up to tell you a lie. You don't know that by now. I mean, so but then you can't just say they lie all the time, because then all of a sudden they'll tell you the truth about something, you know, and or what you perceive to be the truth. I don't know. It's kind of, that's a precarious thing. That's an interesting subject, one that I'm going to be having a conversation with the one and only Mike Adams probably tomorrow. I contacted him today because there's something that I want to share with him. And I knew him before he was famous. Yeah, the Freedom Ranger. When I first interviewed with him, it was way back when we had the pig thing going on. And I had no idea. I interviewed with a lot of people about that, and I can't even remember who they are now at this point. But Mike Adams was one that, then I started to see his face show up on YouTube, and they kicked him off YouTube. He was one of the first ones kicked off. So, I really think profoundly, I want to make a profound statement. Oh, figures I'm going to have to sneeze. Excuse me. I think they can do that to you to kind of get you off track. Yeah. We have issues that happen in our world all the time that a lot of attention is shown on those issues, a lot of attention. And a lot of times I really have to question is, if it's true, why are they focusing so much attention on it? It has nothing to do with me, right? I can name, all right, Dion, name something that's in the news now and that has changed the way you think about things. Something happens, and all of a sudden now you're changing. I feel differently about the FBI now. I feel very differently about them. I always thought there was Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. and they were good people, and now they're raiding President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estates. Ooh, bad. Feel bad. Well, every week there's something new, right? Now, if it's true that really happened, so what? If it's not true that happened, that didn't happen, but it's just another lie or a spell or incantation, whatever. So what? So what? I mean, that's not what, I'm not involved in that. I guess somebody can make the argument, well, if they can do it to the president, they can do it to you. That's the argument that Fox News is making right now. You should all be scared. So now, where the way it should be is when, let's say you're at a gathering someplace and somebody, like this actually happened to me. I was at this music festival and we were doing we had a petting zoo there, and this guy's there, and he his wife looked kind of hippie-ish, but he didn't. And I'm talking with him, and we are kind of hitting head, we were jiving, I guess, the music festival, so we were jiving. No, it wasn't. We weren't jiving anyway. We were grooving, and I said, "So, are you ex-military or something?" He says, "No, I'm actually Grand Rapids policeman." I said, "I knew it. I knew there was something about you, right?" And to me, at that time, it was like, "Oh, cool. I'm really into stuff like that, cop things and all stuff like that, the equipment and the cars." And I wanted to be a policeman when I was a kid, and just a Starsky and Hutch type thing. Um, that's the way it should be, right? But what they've done is they've changed it all now, where when somebody tells you they're a cop, then it's kind of like, oh, ooh, you know, oh, I'm a state policeman. Oh, wow, really? Yeah, I wanted to be a state cop too. You guys do some really cool stuff. But now the gist of what they do is, bad and abusive and all that stuff. And that's been done. That programming has been done to us. And now they're doing the same thing with the FBI. Oh, they can raid him, they'll raid you. If it's true. If it's true. I mean, if you were at a party or something, talking with people, sitting around the campfire, and the guy's, well, actually, I'm an FBI agent. I would be before I would be kind of like, whoa, really? What's that like? I mean, just like if somebody tells me that they were a Green Beret, or yeah, I'm a combat controller. Like, oh, really? Wow, what's that like? What was your training like? What's your day to day like? What's it? What kind of gun do you carry and all that stuff? But they've followed it up now to where when you hear FBI, it's sort of like, oh, be afraid. So I don't really like that. I think it's spells and incantations. I don't like any of it, right? And it's really getting old. But I don't know how I got to there, but a lot of the things that we give attention to, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I can't think of an American citizen that would not benefit from more fertile soils in their general vicinity. And you might be thinking, well, I just have a yard that I'm in. I'm not a professional farmer. I just do a little homesteading. Well, maybe you would transition into professional farming if you had more fertility, because more fertility would result in a better homesteading operation, and you would be more fruitful, and you would say, wow, I think I really can do this. I'm better at this. Fertility of the soil is sort of like, let's say you're a golfer, and you're like, well, I'm never going to be a good golfer, so I'll only just have a 9-iron, and I won't even have a bag. I'm not going to have a caddy. I'll just carry the 9-iron, and that's it. And so you're probably never going to be very good of a golfer, But let's say you're a golfer and you say, well, I'd like to do as good as I can at this with what I have. I know I'm starting out at golfing when I'm 35 years old, and I probably won't make it to the Masters, but I'm going to do the best that I can. So I'm going to go get some training. I'm going to learn how to actually play this game correctly. I'll learn the rules of the game because I have no idea what the rules are. I don't even know how to drive a golf cart. So I'll get my golf cart license and I'll really make a go of it. That's what fertility of your soils is like. So you've got a homestead. Let's say it's just a half-acre yard around your house and then your yard. Well, if you make the decision that you want to turn it into a little homestead, or I shouldn't use the word little, a homestead, you want to have areas where you can do things that would stray a little bit off just the average, croquet setup. You're going to be doing things out there. Maybe you have some chickens, and maybe you have a nice garden, and a half acre lot is a big lot. You could just have grass out there, but if you want to grow vegetables, you could probably become fairly independent on just a half acre. Actually, people have commented before about, well, I don't have enough room to feed calves out, to do beef. Well, that's not really true. You don't need all that much space. Think about a quarter of an acre, how big of a space that is. And think about what cows actually do and what they live for, to eat and drink and then lay down, and then eat, drink, and lay down, and then poop. So they'll eat about 35 pounds of hay a day, dry matter they call it, and then they'll give you about 50 pounds of manure. It seems odd, but it's true. They will. So you'll not only get the beef out of them or the milk, you'll also get all this, in a week. Let's see if somebody can do the figuring on that. 50 times 7, 350 pounds of manure you will get out of a single cow in a week. Think about that. 350 pounds of manure. That's incredible. And what's that good for? Oh, it's good for a lot. I mean, if you're going to have that big garden, you're going to need that manure. And let's say that your cows are on a half an acre or a quarter of an acre. Let's say you're just feeding out some steers, and you're just rolling round bales in there. They're just eating, laying down, drinking, walking around. They're not, if they were on 2 acres and you're putting bales in there, they won't go away from the bales. They're just going to want to eat the bales. They'll stay right there. So you don't really need all that much space for them. And if you are trying to run a homestead, you're going to need the fertility from the manure. And that's where we're going to start talking about composting. You see, your fertility on your property will not, well, I got to be careful with this. You can wish for it, but it won't happen if you don't do something. You got to do something. Otherwise, it would be fertile, right? Once you get the fertility wagon going, it goes on its own. It goes on its own. Let me tell you what I mean by that. We had I've told you guys about this before. Well, so maybe I'll use a different area and talk about a different area. I have a field that I remember when I was first cutting hay on it. There was you'd run the hay bine over it, and there would just be wisps of hay that you'd leave there. It didn't even seem like it was worth it to go over it with the rake and rake it into a pile so you could roll it up. And that's the way it was. It was always like that right there. And if you were to come here, it's just south of the grow area. So hopefully all of yous will be coming to the soils workshop this weekend with Craig Schaff. This is what I'm getting at. This guy is going to be here in the flesh. We will have him for about 7 hours that we can hit him with every question we want to about soil fertility. And I'm trying to tell you, this is where you start in homesteading. This is the place to begin, is soil fertility. It doesn't if it's not fertile, it won't get fertile on its own. Not likely. Unless, there was like a Noah's flood or something like that. Then maybe something might happen. But generally, it doesn't happen on its own. Fertility, say out in the forest, is that way because you've got this cycle going on where the trees go up, they leaf out, the leaves fall off, they decompose, the bacterial action and the microbial action in the soil, decomposes all of these leaves, and then the worms mate, and they're setting up little houses and stuff, and then they're pooping every place. And so fertility is mounting. Every year that goes by, it becomes more and more and more fertile. It gets to a point where it kind of stalls because there's not much light that gets through. But then what will happen is selective cutting happens in a good foresting operation. Let the light come through, and it just takes off. You see those areas that have been clear cut, how they take off with all these small trees just take right off, and bushes and things like that. And then the big trees come up and they take control of things. That is a natural process that happens. When we have a farm scenario like we have with our farm, it's cleared, right? It's cleared so that the farmer could get out there and they could till the fields and they could grow crops in the fields. I don't know is the way that they did it, looking back on it, was the best way, because like this place was cleared in 1900, and then by 1960, the fertility of the soils was going down. It was going down because the farmers were continually taking off. And in the 50s, they weren't fertilizing the fields. They weren't doing that. What were they doing? They were making they coveted the manure of the animals. They coveted it. They didn't just dispose of it, just put it in a pile and forget about it. They didn't do that. That was their sole source of fertility, was what went on at the back end of a cow. So I've told you this before, that in the book 80 Acres that I read, you can still get it, and a lot of guys have read it, and Haven DeZoo has read it, so he's one of the guys on here that's read it. They would actually, when a cow manured in the milking station, they would be right in there behind the cow, picking that up with a fork, and then they would take it and they would put a little bit of straw down, and they would put it on. They would actually bed it. They would bed it, right? And then put straw over it, and then put the next one on. So they were making a manure lasagna. That's how important that manure was to them, right? And then they would take that lasagna out and they would add to it. Why? Because there's bacteria in the cow's gut that is coming out with the manure, that 50 pounds of manure per day. And then you add stuff to it, the bedding, and then you're growing that whole medium, right? So that's really what composting is. In today's world, composting is thought of as, well, you got these leaves that you raked up, you can compost them. Or in my case, we run this chicken butchering business, and wind up with a third of a yard of, like today, a third of a yard of feathers, of wet feathers. Like, what do you do with that? Compost them. It's disposal. But when I'm putting that in the pile, I'm actually thinking, this is more than disposal, because this pile is going to be what I spread on the fields. So the fields will grow more grass, so the cows can eat better grass and give better manure, along with better meat and better milk, right? And I kidded about this with some people that were here, but I'm not kidding about it anymore. It's reality. You have people come here for classes, right? And we've got an outhouse. It's kind of an in-house, actually, because it's got a bucket in it that I just haul the bucket out, and then that bucket goes in the compost pile. And at first, when I did it, I thought, is this legit? Because I remember years ago there was a little community farming operation up in Traverse City, and they had a composting toilet, and they mixed it in with their compost. Oh, and the city shut them down. They SWAT teamed them. You know why? Because of pathogens. Freaking idiots. Pathogens. How stupid is that? There's nothing more normal in this world than manuring, you know? Nothing more normal than that. But somehow it's like, ooh, we got to handle that like hazardous waste. It's like, put your hazmat suit on before you pick up that manure. Come on. How stupid. So we like to talk about our processes and how our processes kill more than one bird with the stone that we're throwing, right? Kill two birds with one stone. That's kind of a saying. I think Marines say that. But people come here for classes, like a fertility class, and then they'll be like, "Ooh, that coffee was good. I got to take a dump, though." And then they go into the outhouse and they leave me a nice little package of bacteria and microbiology that's foreign to this farm, right? It's actually foreign to this farm. We haven't seen that here, right? So, and it might seem kind of gross, but the difference between a human manure and a dog manure or a chicken or a cow, who cares? What's the difference? I guess the only wild card in there is pharmaceuticals. Somebody could be taking psychotropic drugs, and I don't know. But I don't think so, because that would be a situation of pollution, right? And the solution to pollution is dilution, right? That's the secret. So in a one little turd this big that's got micro bits in there of some sort of drug that we probably wouldn't want, in a huge compost pile spread out on a massive field, I don't know if that's anything that I'm going to lose sleep over. I'm not even gonna put it on the radar. I'm not gonna. No, I won't do that. I mean, no, I'm just not going to. So when you come to our classes, try and time things correctly if you don't mind, because we're collecting microbiological life, and you have it in you, and it's diverse. Like, we had some women come up from Detroit, way down in Detroit. Now I know that their stuff was different, right? And then people from down in Muskegon, oh yeah, way different. We're gonna have like a test kit, so we can test it. But no, seriously, you want a very diverse microbial content on your homestead. You want. So the trick to that would be to work at it a little bit. And we always defer to nature when we've got a topic, and you get to a certain point and you think, well, I don't really know. Even if I had a microscope here and I did a test, do I really know if it's okay? I don't really know, but just look how it works in nature. I ask you, does a bear poop in the woods? And that's all you need to know. They do. So, and you would too if you were a bear and you were eating berries and you're out in the woods. Okay, so in our composting operation, we want to look at it and say, okay, is this sustainable? Can we continue to do this with what we have on the farm? And so I think that if I was going to set up another farm operation, I would kind of reverse engineer it. And I would say, oh, am I, let's see, I'll put it in a question. Am I And am I making compost because I've got cows, or do I have cows because I want to make compost? And it's it works both ways. It really does. And what I'm saying is, you want to um, start looking at your cow's manure differently than you did before. It's not just a pile of poo. It's a pile of poo. You know, no, there's a lot there that you can utilize. And okay, so in a natural situation, or a situation that we're sitting up here, we do uh, grazing, a lot of grazing, a lot of intensive grazing. So our cattle are out. Uh, they they're walking on the ground, so they're disturbing the ground. What that does is it opens the ground up. It exposes the seed bank, and then they are manuring onto it. Right. So that seed bank all of a sudden is getting a bacterial load on it. It's getting moisture. The seeds that are in that disturbed soil are going to be activated, and you're going to get more growth. So, how do we imitate that scenario? How do we imitate that scenario? Let's say that if you are like me, my cows have to be up in the wintertime. That's the best way that I figured out to do this, is to keep them up close to the house so they can, eat. Just all they do is eat hay all day and drop manure and come and drink water and get milk. That's all they do. Um, but then all that manure that's on the ground in the spring, when I scrape that all up, that's the beginning of my compost pile. Now, what would I do with that to increase the value of it? Let's say I just scraped it up into a pile. As a matter of fact, when we moved here, there was a massive pile out there. Every time that they cleaned out the barn, they just piled it and they just left it. They didn't see it. This is probably guys that were here from like 1988, I think, is when the last people moved in here. 88 until we bought it, and so it's quite a long time. And that's what they did. They didn't see it as something that was usable, and we moved that pile and spread it every place. So that was the beginning of my indoctrination into composting. Now, I didn't really know that much about composting. I know my grandfather had a compost pile, but I didn't know what made it work. I just know that every morning we would walk up to the corner store in Hyde Park, Boston, and he'd get the paper, a cigar, a White Owl cigar, and on the corner of this wall, there would be a cut-off milk carton every morning with coffee grounds in it, because they made coffee in that little store. And every morning it was just like, that's what we did. And I would carry that back, and he would have the paper under his arm. And sometimes I remember he bought me a bubblegum cigar one time. It happened to be yellow. I never forget that. And it was banana. Yeah. And then we'd come back. He would put that in the compost pile and go in. We'd have breakfast, and then he would sit and read the paper and smoke a cigar. One a day. Did it every day. All right. Where'd that story come from? So, are we going to be able to be sustainable? I would have to say, let's say you're just doing vegetable gardens. Do you have trees in the yard that are going to drop leaves? Because you need something to go into it. You need brown stuff to go into it. You need green stuff to go in. So will you have clippings? Will you have, if you mow the yard, will you have clippings? Is there anything else that you could get? What do you have that you could maybe get? We've talked before about the guys that do the tree trimming. Excellent stuff if you can get those wood chips. Excellent, excellent stuff. Out by the seacoast, seaweed. Oh man, that is some seriously good stuff. It's got a lot of mineral in it. Really, really good stuff. You can overdo it though, believe it or not. Boy, if I lived out by the seacoast, I would be nailing that stuff. There's so much of it. And I would be feeding it to the pigs or running it through a shredder and composting it. Man, what good stuff. What else is out there? Guys that do yard services, they're always looking for a place to dump their stuff. And this came up the other day. I was talking to a fellow about it, and he's like, "Yeah, but I don't know. I don't want all that fertilizer in there." And I thought, I don't know if I'd lose sleep over that. I think I would just say, well, they've applied it, and now it's going to be in the compost pile. Compost pile is going to get real hot. And I don't know if I'd worry about that, but this guy was not going to do it. Brown paper bags, newspaper, yeah. Justin Z, I fed aquatic weeds from my lake to the pigs. They loved it. I wonder if there was something that you could grow in there, Justin, something that would grow in the lake. And then you could rig up like a rake to go on your loader. I've seen that before. You go out there and you rake it in and then get a grapple for your loader so you can pick that stuff up. That would be cool. That would be so cool. Okay, so why do we want to worry about the fertility around our dwellings and in our area that we're going to live in? You might ask me, well, why do you worry about your lawns to be so fertile? And I do that because I like to live in the summertime when the environment is nice and green. It feels right. I feel at ease. When it feels brown and dry, I feel at ease. I feel diseased. I'm not at ease with that, right? So when I look at the natural environment, I don't see an abundance of erosion, right? That's kind of our thing. We've created a lot of erosion because of the way we build things. It doesn't have to be that way. And when you have good soil fertility, I did make a video about this a few days ago. I'd got up in the morning and it was raining cats and dogs. And there was a time when I would be like, oh boy, here we go. Because there would be erosion everywhere. I'd have really bad ruts out in the fields, really bad ones, like a foot deep and wide too. And then what do? I mean, you have to find something from someplace to put in that hole. You can't just leave it there. And the fields weren't doing very good anyway. There was it was very sandy. And yeah, but the other day when we had that happen, because of the increased fertility out on the fields, the field could just take it. I mean, I saw no damage from the intense rain that we had, and the cows walked in on it. They didn't mess anything up. It didn't, because it's no longer fragile, right? It was a fragile root structure. It was a fragile growing area, and all of that is changed now, right? You can drive vehicles out over it and it doesn't break apart. And that's all because of the fertility. And fertility gives you something else too. It gives you resiliency, right? And resiliency would be like, we have a super dry time, right? And that's really what happens in the farm world. You have the environmental conditions and they go from extreme to extreme. That happens all the time. But when you've got a solid, fertile ground, a solid fertile field, you don't worry about drought. You just don't worry about it. I mean, I would like more rain, but if you come here now and you look out over my fields, I'm totally green right now. And I'm totally green because I've followed some instructions that were given. None of this stuff is brain surgery. None of it's a secret. It's just a sequence of techniques that, okay, let's learn this technique and let's learn why that technique aids in fertility to this type of ground. And when you learn that, you mull it over in your head, and you kind of becomes yours, and then you try it out and you explain it to somebody of what you're doing. Then you start to, oh, okay, I kind of get it. I kind of understand it. And then when the next level of fertility is thrown at you, it's like, oh yeah, it's kind of like this, only a little different because the land that you're ministering to is slightly different. It's got a slightly different sand and loam content and all that stuff. Oh yeah, but I see, right? And you kind of get it. And then after a while, when you've been working this, like my property here has different soils all over the place, you kind of get a feel for it to where you go to somebody else's house and it's like, well, I know what I'd do there, but he's not asking me, so I'm not going to tell him. But I know what I'd do there, And don't get any notions that I've arrived, because I certainly haven't. I had a situation on my top field, which is one of my best fields, and I spread somewhere around 100 yards of compost up there that I made. And then we plowed it all in, smoothed it out, reseeded it with a cold weather mix, with a color packer, did a really nice job. I had some neighbors helping me. And that field produces. And when we first moved here, it was just like a dried up old baseball field. It was almost like, well, forget that field. Nothing happens there. You don't even walk on it. It's that cactuses on it and everything else. You couldn't actually walk on it in bare feet. But now it's one of my best producing fields. Last year, I didn't even cut it. And it kind of worried me a little bit. This year, I did cut it. I normally get 17 bales off it. I got 12 or 11, I think. So it bounced back, but not the way I wanted it to. Not the way I would have liked it to. And believe it or not, at this point, I started thinking, well, maybe I need to get some fertilizer on this. I started thinking that way. Like, well, what would that cost? And where would I get it? Who would? And then we had our grazing workshop, and Parker was talking about fertility, and he started talking about a situation that he was dealing with at another farm that he worked at. And I thought, well, that's exactly what's going on here. And he says, well, I would do this. And then I started thinking, oh yeah, okay, that's what I need to do. And it was really very simple. It's a couple of steps. But here's what I'm going to do for this field. I'm going to rent a spreader, and the co-op down there, they'll rent you a spreader. Eventually I'm going to have my own, for spreading compost. But I'm going to rent the spreader, and I'm going to get however many 6 tons of potash that they put in it. And that's why they rent it to you. It's because they're going to sell you the potash. And the potash is, it's an organic fertilizer. It's a cast off from coal-fired plants, I think, or wood ash. Potash. What is potash? Justin, you know what potash is. But anyway, I'll get that. I'll bring it home. I'll mix it with compost, and then I'll mix seed with it. And I might even mix in a few bags of lime. I'll get it all mixed up, and then I'll put it in the spreader, and I'll take it out there and I'll spread it. Then the next thing that I will do, or before I do that, I'll graze it off real tight. So I'll leave the cows on it for a long time. I want them to beat it up. I want them to open it up so that when I do seed it, a lot of those seeds are going to find their way into the soil. And then I'm going to do this spreading on top of that. And then I will bale graze it. So bale grazing is where you have a section of field, or you have a field, and you drop a bale out there. You put a bale ring over it, and then you limit the cows to a small section of that field. And then the next bale would butt up against the area that you just bale grazed, and so on until you hit every area on that field. Maybe I should draw that out. I can do that. I'm just feeling kind of lazy today because I think green will work. Bale grazing. Let's talk about bale grazing. Let's say you have a field like this. That kind of is my top field there. All right, you can see that. All right, so say I drop a bale right here, put a bale ring on it, and then set up a temp fence like that. And then the next bale, when this one's gone, 1,000-pound bale. Let's see, 1,000 pounds. We can do a little math here. Okay, 1,000-pound bale divided by 35 equals 28.57. All right, so if I had one cow on that bale, that cow would eaten 35 pounds of dry matter a day. And the number is, 30 to 40, actually. So let's go 35. That one bale would last 28 days. 28 days. In 28 days, that cow would give me times 50, 1,428 pounds of manure. So if I left the cow on here, on this area, for 28 days, he would, or she would, deposit 1,500 something pounds of manure out there. So my chances are pretty good that that cow is going to manure in a spot where I've put some seed. Pretty good. But let's say it's 10 cows. They're not going to get 28 days. They'll get 2.8 days out there. And then I'd be moving them over here and putting another bale out like that. And then here. 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 See? So at the end of my operation, which I'm going to be feeding the cows anyway. I mean, it's not like I'm going out of my way, moving these little fences, it's not such a big deal. And, if the ground's frozen, then it's a little bit of a hassle, but there's a way, if you go out there and if you have a tool that you can, beat a hole, then you can get a fence post down in there, and there's a way. There's always a way to do it. But I would be able to figure, let's say I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bales that I'm putting down times 1,000. I know what it is, but 10 times 1,000 is going to be 10,000 pounds of hay that's out there. Divided by 35 is going to equal 285 cow days, right? And 285 times 50 is going to give me 14,285 pounds of manure that I'm strategically placing on the field, right, by bale grazing. If I didn't do it that way, like in the dry lot, we call it the dry lot anyway, it's up by the back of the barn. It's just a field, and then the water's inside the barn and stuff. So in the winter months, they're just up here, and I'll move the bale from here to here to here to here to here every time. But it's not a very big area. And then what I'm doing is I'm scraping up the manure and composting it, and then I'm spreading it out on the fields. So if I do it this way, I'm just directly getting it out on the fields. And the other benefit that I get here is the cows are on the field and they're disturbing the field, which you want that. I mean, when I first got here, I was used to what my friend back in Montana did, Paul Hinderigger. What he did was he would take bales and he would actually, this is the way he did it. He had a flatbed Ford truck, and he had a bungee in the truck. And I know because I did it for him one time when he got himself castrated. You'd put a bungee on the steering wheel, put it in first gear, and then get out of the truck and get on the back of it. And then it was loaded with square bales, and you just cut them and you push them off, cut them and push them off, cut them and push them off. And then you have all the strings in one hand. He had a lot of cows. He probably was feeding 50 of them. And then the cows would eat out on the field, and then they would manure right on the field. And that's how he did it. And when we moved here, I said to a guy that's a prominent farmer in the area, I said, how come you guys don't graze on the fields? How come you don't put your cows out on the field? And he says, because it's a hay field. And I thought, oh, okay, I guess. What am I missing here? But we're talking about fertility in lieu of chemical fertilizer, which is chemical fertilizer sustainable? No, it isn't. Actually, it's like taking steroids because it gives you a punch, but then not so much. And then you got to take some more steroids or even a bigger dose to get the same punch out of it. So it's sort of like that with chemical fertilizers. And long-term use of chemical fertilizers is very detrimental to the health, the soil health, the health of the soil. Very detrimental because the soil is, I try to put it this way when I'm showing people, like if you look at what's on my driveway, that's dirt, right? It's dead. There's nothing other than an occasional weed that grows out in between where you don't drive. It's dead. There's nothing there. And we kind of want it that way, right? I don't want to have to mow the driveway. But then you look over onto where the grass is and you pull that grass apart, Put your little nose down in there. Ooh, that is fertile. That smells good. I would like to lay down on this and take a nap. I'd be close to the fertility of the soil. Put my little toes in there when I'm feeling depressed, and it'll transfer energy up into me. And I'm not sure that that's not true. I think we insulate ourselves from ground way too much. But anyway, dirt and soil are not the same. Soil is a medium that is full of different types of life. And and I don't know why. I mean, I'm going to hear it this weekend when Schaff is here, when we hear Schaff's rendition of it. And he really knows what he's talking about. I highly recommend all of you to come to this. I highly, highly recommend it. I mean, more so than anything else that really we've seen, because this is the starting point, right, of your homestead is the soil. It's the starting point. It's too many times we overlook it and we think, like, well, the family milk cow is the starting point. It really isn't. It really isn't. A lot of the things that I did to increase the fertility around this place, I didn't really understand them when I did it. I just did what I was told. And I've seen that what I did was effective, because this summer, we had issues with rain, with drought, and all that stuff. I can't complain. I can't complain a bit. Everything kept right where it needs to be. We've actually had pretty good rain. We have had some hot temperatures and stuff. Nothing that I could really complain about. Is if you come here now, we are completely green, completely, and that's because of the fertility. When we first moved here, it wasn't like that. A lot of times it was just brown, and you look at it and say, wow, is that grass ever going to recover? And sure enough, it kind of would, but never enough to really cut any decent hay off. All right. A lot of your fertility is going to be timed with the seasons. We don't live in a place where it's just the same all the time. Our seasons here are radically different. At my house right now, you could be outside in shorts and a t-shirt and maybe even want to get in the pool. But around January, it's brutal. It's brutally cold. It's no man's land, actually, sometimes. The wind is whipping and it is really cold, and it's just very different. You don't feel like swimming, although I do. You don't want to. And then, fall time is completely different than springtime. So there's certain things that we are not going to be able to get done fertility-wise in the winter that we can do in the spring, and certain things that we can do in the summer that we can't do in the spring. And there's all these different techniques, and that's going to be some of the things that is going to be covered this weekend, that Schaff's going to cover. I think that I am going to sit there and I'm going to take notes. In the past, I was always kind of like, well, when's he going to talk about seed saving? Come on. But now that I've been in this game for a while, I see that almost everything, I can't think of too much that isn't connected to the fertility of the soil that we live on, we walk on, we do everything on it. And I don't know. I started this presentation off by saying we give so much attention to certain things, and things that are really important, we don't give it much attention at all. And I can see why I didn't think it was that important. I can see, looking back, it's like, well, I can see why I used to think that doing some of the things I used to do was a good idea. But at this point, I would never do it. Or I would not probably do it. Never is a strong word, right? But at this stage of the game, I can see where probably if I want to take this farm to the next level, it's going to be with methods of fertility. Methods of fertility. So that's what I'm going into this weekend looking for. Like I have things that I need to know. And I'm all ears. Craig shares everything with us. Everything. He tells us everything. This is the guy that grows like 16-inch long carrots. He really knows what he's doing. And he's able to enunciate the effect that fertility has on the food he grows. But what effect does that food have on us? Because it's kind of an intimate thing. We chew it up and swallow it. What effect does that have when we're eating nutrient dense food, right? So we want fertility in us and around us. I'm quite sure that there's a profound effect that happens to you when your knees and your hands and your elbows are in the dirt in your garden. I'm sure of it. I don't know as I could prove it, because if I go out there and I'm working in the garden and stuff, and then I get up, see, I'm happy. I don't think that would fly. But I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough one to prove. But there are some times when I feel like I'm just going to go take my shoes off and walk around outside. I do it a lot. I do it as much as I can. My feet, they're not anything like they were when I was a kid. I used to be able to walk on hot asphalt. Nothing. My feet were like moccasins. They were just like leather. And not like that anymore, but I wear shoes most of the time. Okay, well, that's it. Circle of seasons. Oh, planning for fertility. Planning for fertility. So let's talk about that. When you're doing processes on your homestead, if nothing else, I don't want to put it that way. Forget that. If nothing else, strike that from the record. Strike that. Plan your processes knowing that, okay, if you are going to be a stone cutter, you're going to have small pieces of stone laying everywhere because you're a stone cutter. So you probably need to figure out something you can do with those small pieces of stone. All right, I'm just using that as an example. Maybe you're going to be a chicken butcherer. Well, you're going to have cast-offs from that. You're going to have heads, necks, feet, feathers. Well, that can be an asset or a liability, but you have to plan that into your plan. And when you're doing your planning, you got to ask yourself that question. Well, let's say I'm going to be you have a side business of lawn care. And then, well, I got this area over there where I can wheel in here with my trailer, my dump trailer. I can dump stuff off. Gee, that's going to be a real pain after a while. Maybe I should just take it to the dump. Well, it's 20 miles over that way, but it's $10 to dump. But, at least I won't have it being an eyesore over there. See, so there's two different ways to look at it, right? Or maybe you run a tree care service. And you were going to get a chipper, but let's just haul these things into the woods and burn them or something. No, then well, if I had a chipper and I could chip this stuff down, then I could add it to this compost pile. And wow, I'd have a lot more, compost going. So your planning has to be with fertility in mind. Okay, so here's what I want to do now. All right. So I've got 15 cows. I feel like we're always about here, about 15, sometimes 20, sometimes 10, but we're always in that neighborhood, and I kind of like that. We've got enough beef, we've got enough milk. I don't want to be 30 beef cows and 10 dairy cows. I don't want to be that. It's too much for what I'm doing with everything else. There's a lot of management involved with those, and I don't always have that kind of time to give them. But the amount of manure that we're producing, oh yeah. If you push the numbers on that amount of manure, yeah, it's pretty good stuff. Bale grazing seems like a really good idea to me. But I also like the compost, because bale grazing is going to work in areas where I can afford to have the cows wandering around. But I still want compost to spread in the yard. Why? Because we're in the yard. I want it to be green. I want my kids to be playing on nice green lawn. I don't want it to be just brown and cactusy. I want it nice and green. The garden, I can't have the cows in the garden, but I need their manure in the garden. So, okay, composting is definitely going to be part of my life, but so is bale grazing. I really like the idea of bale grazing. But here's where I want to go with my composting operation. I saw a sand spreader. It was over in Harrison, actually. And I got out and I looked at it, and the county owned it, and they were selling it for some reason. And what it was an aluminum bed, had a V bottom, and you would bolt it onto a truck frame. And when I saw that, I was kind of disappointed, because I don't have a truck that I could bolt it on, and I just didn't. So I looked at it. It was reasonably priced. It was in really good condition. Would have been perfect for what I wanted. But then I thought, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I was looking for a smaller unit that I could put on the back of my pickup, and sort of like a sand spreader. And when you find those, they're usually pretty beat up, or they want a lot of money for them. So it's too bad, because if I'd gotten that first one, I could have slid it into my 2-ton truck and just left the sides on the truck and just slid it in there. It would have been perfect. And I don't know why I didn't think of that. But then I will get even more intense about composting. I have a 2-ton dump truck, right? It's a 1966 Chevrolet C60, and I bought it out in Montana. And get this, when I retired from the Air Force, they were going to pay me $7,000 to move my family back to my home of record. And my home of record, where I went in the service, was California. But I was actually not going back to California. I was coming here to Michigan. But they said, well, that's okay. I think they would have paid me some more money to go to California, but it was like $7,700 to come here. And so I thought, hey, you know what? If I can find a truck, I'm going to need a truck out in Michigan. So I'm going to look around for a truck, and I'll buy it, and then I'll pack all my family stuff in it, and I'll drive it out here. And just so happens there was a car dealership that I had bought 2 cars from, and they both turned out to be lemons. Pete's was the name of it. And after I got burned there the second time, I thought, nah, I'm never going back there, And but then I was driving by. It was like 5 years after I'd been burned, and they had this C60 sitting out there. And so I thought, well, nobody that's working there now is the same people that were there before. The salesmen, they all rotate pretty quickly. The owner, he's hardly ever there. I never did lay eyes on him. So I go in there, and there's this pretty nice truck, and the salesman comes out, never seen him before, he'd never seen me before, and says, "Why don't we take it for a ride?" Yeah, okay. Took it for a ride, and we're coming back, and I said, "Yeah, it's pretty nice. What do you think they're wanting for it?" And he says, "I think it's about $7,000." And I'm thinking to myself, hot diggity. We get back to the yard, and there's this woman. It was Mrs. Pete, and she's got a clipboard, and she's doing some inventorying or something. And the guy says, I remember her name was Ida. "Ida, how much does Pete want for this truck?" And she looks at the clipboard and she says, $2,750. And I looked at the guy and I said, "Sold." Just like that. So for $2,700 and $2,750, I got this truck. And the next, I wrote him a check right then, and I said, "I'll be back tomorrow to get it." So I was going to have somebody from my work drive me over there, and then I could drive it back to my house. And when I went in there, they all had pretty long faces on them. So evidently something had gone wrong, but I didn't care. I got the truck and I drove out. And then that truck had been at another establishment that I used to pass on my way home from work if I went a certain way home. And I went that certain way, and sure enough, that truck was not there. So I pulled in there, and the old guy comes out and he says, "What are you doing with that thing?" I have my uniform on. And I said, "I just bought it. I bought it off Pete's." And he says, "Yeah, that's a good old truck. I've had it for 30 years now. It's really served me well. Good old truck. I bought it from a guy up in Fort Shaw." He's telling me, and he says, "What are you going to do with it?" I said, "Well, I'm getting out of the Air Force soon, and I'm retiring, and they're going to let me move back to my home of record. So I'm going to clean this truck up. I'm going to move all my stuff with this." And he says, "Well, that's a good idea. That's putting your money to good use." And real nice guy. And he says, "Tell me something. What did old Pete get you for that truck?" And I said, $2,750. And he says, "Are you kidding me?" He says, "That's what he gave me in trade on that Cadillac right there." And apparently the man had to buy that Cadillac for his wife because he'd been inappropriate in some way, shape, or form, and had to make amends with his wife with a Cadillac. So that's how I got the truck, and I still got it. But this truck, I can go around the community that I'm in. If I see a pile of manure and I stop and say, "You need that?" People want to get rid of it. They don't see manure as a good thing. They see it as a liability. If I bring it home, I compost it for a little while, spread it out on my fields, I am gaining. I'm gaining. See, so we live in a tremendously abundant world, tremendously, but we just got to know how to unlock that. And it's not only the cool kids can unlock it. That's not it. It's just you have to gear yourself towards that thought process. And how did I get to live on Baker's Green Acres? It was just a lot of little steps, little good steps. And when I first got here, I came across Craig Schaff and I listened to some of the stuff he said. And now we've got a very fertile place to live. So we're having them this weekend for a soils workshop, and you are all humbly invited. I hope you come because it is the place to begin. All right, so that's it for tonight. Thursday night is our interview night, and we're actually going to be interviewing the Stumpos, Dion and Amy Stumpo. So this is going to be kind of fun because they've been friends for a while and members of the tribe, and their approach is a little different than most people's. So we'll see where that goes. It should be kind of fun. Okay, what do we got here? I missed a couple of things. Okay. The wind's with us. Okay, what's this? There's an actual science that backs the effect of working with the soil that has a defined effect on folks. Vets suffering from PTSD, Comfort Farm in Georgia comes to mind. Yeah. Yeah. Nancy's with us. The ghost coming in kind of late, aren't you, Canadians? You probably were out down at the bar having a cold one. That's probably what the story was. And Audubon Automotive is here. All right. One of these days, that truck, that was the coolest thing, right? Because then it came out in the Auto Trader that week. So I used to get the Auto Trader, it was free. It's that little magazine you can get, all communities have it. Yeah, I was out visiting Sisty, huh? Yeah, sure. Out on the town causing trouble, I bet. These Canadians, man. No wonder Trudeau has to keep you guys under control. Old man snooze, huh? Don't know what that is. Actually, I do. But the Auto Trader, it came out, and I clipped that, and then I laminated it. So I have it. And you know what? I'm going to bring it up here, and I'm going to put it. I got it down in the office, but I'm going to bring it up and put it up here. That truck is so cool. And I noticed it's got this little compartment. It's really weird. It's this little compartment on the dash. I have no idea what it is, but when you open it up, my cell phone fits right there. It fits right there. So you can actually, while you're driving, you can watch movies, right? And I think it's just more testimony that time travel really is reality. Because who would think a 1966 truck would have a little compartment where you can put your cell phone? It's incredible. All right, I'm going to get going. We'll be on with the Tribe Plus people. If you want to be cool, you really want to be in the Tribe Plus. If you want to join that, it's a little bit every month, but you get all the information that's coming out. All the, like this class that's coming up with Schaff. I mean, it's going to be recorded, and you will get it. Which, if you guys you can't come down from Canada, at least you could check this out, and all the other content that's on there. So if you can't come, please join up with the Tribe Plus. That's going to be what helps us keep this ministry going. Otherwise, there is nothing. We can't do super chats anymore. So anyway. All right, I'm going to get going. We will see you Thursday night to interview with the Stumpos, Dion and Amy. All right.